Welcome back to Module 2, and this lesson number 2, we're going to talk about ethics and morality. So, what are ethics and morals? There's a couple of distinctions between the two. Ethics are principles that govern a business. They're based on what is considered to be good and what is considered to be right for individuals and the general society. You can find them from basically external sources. And different approaches to ethics include utilitarian approach, rights approach, fairness/justice. And this is something that you can look more into, but this is to give you an idea of what goes into ethics. Morals, on the other hand, are the final decision of what is good and what is right for individuals and society as a whole. It comes from more of an internal source. Examples of morals are: you need to be fair, you should always be brave, you need to be bold, be empathetic, and stuff like that. So with all of that being considered, what is a fair advertisement? So a fair advertisement is consistent with a company's values and ethics to portray a product or a service in a manner that is honest, transparent, and encourages a prospect to make a decision without a blatant manipulation of the customer. So promises and guarantees are tangible, and there is proof or reason to believe that the promises are going to be fulfilled. That's something you need to consider when you're making your Google ads. Rank number 1 here today by clicking this today. You need to be careful when you say stuff like that, because the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, and the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, they have regulations, as well as maybe your local municipal regions. They all have regulations about advertisements. So it's important to know a couple of those. The advertisement does not inflate numbers or results to dissuade prospects from choosing another reliable or otherwise trustworthy source. So sometimes I've seen this a lot in the SEO field and in the digital marketing field, where they'll say, we have seen 500 new clicks for our clients, when maybe they've done nothing like that. They try and find a way to manipulate those numbers and argue that, our numbers in this source say this, even though we know that it's a bit flawed, and numbers from other sources say that it's 0. We're just going to go with the 500 because it's going to help us make more revenue. That would be considered an unfair advertisement, in my opinion. So we're going to discuss a couple of examples. So the first one is 5-Hour Energy. It says it fixes tired fast. Is that considered a fair advertisement? Every time I've taken 5-Hour Energy, I go crazy. So it does fix tired pretty fast, I would say. And if you look at it, that's what you get. When you purchase a 5-Hour Energy bottle, you get the 5-Hour Energy bottle like it appears on the advertisement in the subway. Now, let's talk about McDonald's. Okay, that's apparently what a double cheeseburger, I think. Yeah, I think it's McDouble or something. Basically, that's what a burger is supposed to look like in the ad on the left, but usually what you end up getting is something on the right. It looks like junk. So, does McDonald's engage in false advertising? Is the company, like the corporate McDonald's, liable for that, or is the franchise, each individual location, liable and responsible to make sure that their burgers look like what's being promoted? Who takes what responsibility? Which is considered fair? And what should be done about it? These are some questions that you just should consider when you're thinking about ethics and morals. Another example. So I get these emails all the time. And the first things that I see, we're going to talk a lot about email marketing in later modules, but for now, we're just going to take a quick example as to what this particular scenario is trying to portray. So this guy says that he visited my website, jcsearch.com, and if you're looking for high quality work from a person that can write simple yet smart code, then I'm the person you're looking for. And at the bottom, it says, if you don't want to receive any emails, please email me back with the mail back with the title unsubscribe, and you won't receive any further information. So I wanted to point this email out because, first of all, he says, I visited your website, jcsearch.com. Did he really? I mean, a lot of people, I may be wrong, he may have actually done this, but if he did, he would know my name is Josh and didn't really need to say hi at jcsearch.com. But what I want to get across is, did he actually visit my website? Sure, it may not matter in the grand scheme of things. He may get his sales from other places, and I might just be trying to get grumpy about something like this because it just becomes annoying. But that's sort of, again, what we're talking about is that fair to say that I went to your website, or did he use a lead generation bot that just aggregated the data? If you're looking for high quality work, well, who determines what's high quality? Maybe he should have elaborated more on that. Now, I'm not trying to say that he's violating anything like federal law or anything like that. I'm just kind of, from an outside perspective, thinking about who determines what sort of claims he gets to make and why does he get to say these things. Sure, he gets to say it because free will, but like what type of thinking goes behind that? And at the bottom, it says, well, at the very least, there's a way to opt out of this, which is very important. We're going to discuss that going forward. So before we do that, let's talk about being technical and being ethical or moral. So ethics and morals aren't always the law. So with this in mind, you need to understand that, sure, you don't have to put, in some products that this is actually sourced from, animals that are being slaughtered by the thousands and all of that stuff that goes into like fast food. But sure, that may not be the law, but should you at least mention it? That's where ethics and morals really comes into play. Now, that's just kind of my off the top of the head example. There may be some regulations around that might be worth looking into. So what is sometimes technically legal, as we just discussed, may not be moral or ethical, and can then cause you future harm. Why? Because years down the line, the government or your local town or whoever, just the government and people may just determine that something that you're doing right now in 10 years is going to be outright wrong. For instance, at the time, it was perfectly okay to ask a woman, in the 50s, if you look at an old TV show, it's called The Honeymooners. There's an episode where the main character's wife is looking to get a job, and she says that she's not married. Or she's encouraged to say that she's not married, because an employer at the time, during I think it was the 50s, would be able to say, "Hey, are you married? And if you are married, I don't feel like hiring you because you may have the potential to be taking going through pregnancy and then taking like a long leave of absence." Now we have different revisions in employment law and stuff, so that's not something that you can really get away with these days. So at the time, it was perfectly fine. It was legal. You could do it. Was it right or was it ethical? I mean, courts decades later deemed that no, it's not, and therefore it should be enacted into law. So basically my takeaway is what you say is legal right now may not be legal, because you can outright just say that it's unethical or it's immoral, and then eventually the law is going to catch up to you. So that's kind of what we just discussed, and especially in the digital age, as things are progressing and as laws are being added to the internet, because the internet is such a new concept, this is something to be really, really careful about. So if you think something is wrong, it probably is. Now, here's something that I would like to touch upon is sometimes doing something that's immediately unethical or immoral is unavoidable in order to maintain the interests of the company and or your survival. This is kind of going off topic, but you need to be very, very careful when you're doing this type of decision making, because sometimes, you may need to fire a bunch of people off the top, right off the bat. It may not be the nicest and right thing to do, but long term it may need to be to ensure the longevity of your company and your survival. So again, use this with extreme caution, but sometimes there are arguments made by people that you can't always be ethical and moral. So let's talk about principles of email marketing ethics. So there's something called the CAN-SPAM Act, and it's set by the Federal Trade Commission. And this is what it basically says. Businesses are not allowed to use misleading header information. And so for an example of that is, you get rich overnight by clicking here. Porn sites do this all the time and stuff like that. So that's against the CAN-SPAM Act. Can't do that. Businesses may not use deceptive subject lines. Then the subject must clearly and accurately, or the line must accurately reflect the content of the message. And if you look at the act, this is what it says. Businesses must identify their email as an ad. So An example is to unsubscribe, click here. You can tell that that's an advertisement. I work with other lawyers to help them reach number 1 of Google, page 1 of Google. Again, that's kind of making clear that it's an ad. Businesses must clearly show the recipient a way to opt out of the list, as we mentioned above. If a person says stop, you stop. Simple. Like, don't keep messaging someone if they're like, yo, don't call me. Don't put them on the new call list. Actually, you stop it. And I get a little bit annoyed about this because when I was running my painting business, I get calls all the time from people that just, I keep saying to the same rep, stop calling me. Make sure you always inform your recipient or the person that you are reaching out to what your purpose is and why you're actually reaching out to them. And I know my face is kind of getting in the way here, so I'm going to make me a little bit smaller. So if you're doing cold email, be careful with using email blasting tools, not just because it can be high bounce rate, but just because it can get you a bad reputation. So next thing in the ethics and morals is spinning content wrong. So spinning content is very popular in the SEO field. Basically, you're just recycling the content that's already out there to gain more trust with Google. So VAs or AI in software spin content to make it look unique by adding or replacing words to trick Google. I would say that this is wrong. Now, is this plagiarism? Technically, no in some cases, but like if you ask any random person, yo, am I plagiarizing someone? And only like respinning what that person says, like, boy, yeah, it is, you know. You can add some facts and diagrams to make your content appear more genuine and thoroughly researched. I think that this is a good practice because you're, at the very least, even if you are recycling content, you're making something new out of it and you're adding value by creating a video on it or a new graphic and stuff like that. So definitely practice that, and we'll definitely talk more about this. This is just kind of getting your head immersed in this type of a topic and the questions that go into a business of SEO. So you can thoroughly research your topics by adding plus edu, plus PDF, plus org, or going through Google Scholar in these sources. I do this with my other site, Koji Languages, that's involved with language learning and stuff. So definitely take a look at that if you have a chance and you want to look at how I do my content research. So other areas that involve ethics, morality, and law. Website terms of service. You should definitely research that and come up with a draft. Using client data. When a client signs up with you, are you allowed to just do whatever you want with their data? Think about that. Right? Who owns it? Contracts and official writings. Again, take into account ethics, morality, and law. Making general claims about a company, promoting yourself online. Cold calling. Sales calls versus harassment calls. As I just mentioned, when does a sales call become a harassment call? You need to consider that. So in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about. So that's all for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about communication and how to communicate effectively. So with all that being said, I wish you guys a great rest of the day, and I hope that you learned something.